Alright, you can divide mages and Frieren into two different categories. We've got the first class mages, all proper and official elites. I mean, they've got uniforms on, they're basically cops. Then there's these adventurers, they're hobos. Look, I like them too, but let's face facts, these guys are hobos. See, I was going through some Frieren episodes, older ones, and the big Grand Mage Association with its lovely officers and everything calls for help from a random who is sleeping under the stars and spending their time doing hobo stuff like odd jobs for food and washing in the river and squatting in abandoned buildings, ripping people off and then fleeing the area before they're caught. They're hobos. If we are making a mage's tier list, a good number of the random hobos would be S tier, and a ton of the organised people with their spiffy uniforms, they'd be down in B. They'd be down in B where they belong. This guy I'd put in C. This guy sucked. I hate this bird brain guy. But this whole two categories actually hits on something bigger about Frieren. How the Mage Association is built around this elitist view, Frieren's rejection of authority, what it says about the strength of experience over recognition. It all comes down to why random hobos are stronger than first-class mages. Now, first of all, she is a hobo. Sure, we saw her house. And Stark has that nice coat, and even Fern lived somewhere for a while. But Frieren is definitely a hobo. It's kind of at the core of the characters. I'm talking hobos in the old-fashioned sense, and if you look at the definition of that, Frieren is pretty much textbook. Frieren travels around, seeking employment for cash, often avoiding work. Just look at the way she lives. She has no permanent home anymore, even in between the meteor showers of no real goal. We pretty much just saw her wandering around, travels to and from casual work. Frieren's main way of getting by in this world is to show up in an area, look for some easy cash-in-hand labour, and then leave before the authorities notice. She's living completely off of the grid, and almost definitely not paying her taxes. I wonder how much she owes to the Empire. Those statues, they don't build themselves. We see it over and over again how these three live. They sleep under the stars, just in the middle of nowhere, washing in public, eating what they find on the land. It's a complete hobo lifestyle. Fern, another hobo. I know she does live here, way in the past, but Haita died. She leaves and takes up the transient lifestyle just like Frieren. She gets used to just moving around and having no permanent home. I'm going to assume the house is property of the church still. Like Fern didn't inherit it, it just got given to another priest afterwards, or maybe made into a museum to Haita, or maybe Frieren forced little Fern to sell it for money to feed her habit. In any case, Fern does not live there anymore. And take Stark, he used to have a home, right? And look how weak he was when he lived there. Now when he becomes a hobo and leaves and packs all of his stuff into a little bindle and hits the road, he's killing dragons. He becomes a travelling hobo and starts killing dragons. That's the power of riding the rails in Frieren. Half the slice of life stuff is a direct result of Frieren's hobo antics, trying to find abandoned free booze, getting caught for an unpaid debt she skipped town on, getting arrested for hitting up the wrong town, an old grudge with another hobo being settled in public. But that hobo adventurer lifestyle might be the key to their strength over the more formal, organised mages. It links to Frieren's complete disregard for authority, something that's a surprisingly consistent thread. It means that the hobo adventurer is stronger than the first-class mage. The first-class mages have passed that official test, got their little certificate that says I'm mage, I can do magic. Do they know how to scrounge up snack money? Frieren shows how hobo teachings get you a bit further, but also why the Magic Association is elitist by design. Those who become first-class mages are a mage's mage, with Photo letting loose bit and healing seems to come from her background before becoming a first-class mage, not the work since. The first-class mages are undoubtedly extremely talented. I mean, those golems were a really cool invention. Denkin becomes one which instantly brings the group up a few notches. But Frieren's more hands-on approach to her apprentice, that seems to have had a quicker payoff. Like, Genau did get sent on the right mission eventually, but his soul got crushed first. Frieren's group is faring just as well growing as mages and warriors. And they didn't even have to do the soul-crushing first. They just got to eat burgers and ice cream. Frieren praises her apprentice and then designated tutor pretty frequently. It's been good for them. The first-class mages live in a desert of recognition, having to get by on the tiny little compliments their mentor sometimes hints or alludes to. One is conductive in training a young girl to become a Death Star, and the other seems unhealthy. Frieren's lifestyle even ties into her approach to magic. She's obsessed with folk magic, like folk stories, like tall tales that hobos tell on the damn train in magic form. It's a hobo's approach to magic. Although her fighting style is based around common offensive and defensive magic, a process she was a part of developing and inventing in the first place. It's a collective approach to the magic system, but one that's not really based on any kind of authority. It's this hobo preference for living unnoticed that's at the core of Frieren's character arc. So do you remember that scene where Frieren tries to just skirt past the Continental Magic Association? It's back when they arrived for the Mage exam. She just wanted to plain quit instead of playing with certifications. She doesn't have any authority beyond an old holy emblem, something so antiquated very few people recognize it at all. It's a small scene, but it's about Frieren's approach to authority, be it a human's institution or an elf's. She doesn't have the interest in getting modern certification, and clearly doesn't have much respect for those titles anyway. The magic organizations change too often for her to take them all that seriously. She prefers her old holy emblem, something so old no one even remembers what it is. In a flashback, even Himmel doesn't know what it is. But he does know that she's a fantastic mage, and isn't that enough? That's kind of her approach since then, that it is enough. Not Himmel's opinion of her. Well, I mean, specifically, maybe Himmel's opinion of her quite a bit mattered. But her proving her skills and becoming known as a mage, that should be her certification. Look at what I do, not what the bit of paper says I'm allowed to do, my license for magic. If it was good enough for Himmel, surely it should be good enough for everyone else. That's the key, not the rusty necklace. That was junk. I mean, they're not caring about authority or the respect. How often does she avoid throwing her name around? She'll chill by statues of her old friends and not bother telling anyone it's her. She just looks like that mage. It's a similar impulse, a disregard for authority and a lack of respect for it. I don't think Frieren tends to come off as a punk kind of funning your nose at authority kind of person, but the glove fits. For a lot of human authorities, I think her lack of acknowledgement is partially time-based, She doesn't know about too many official Empire authorities because she's outlived them, and views them as something new and silly. She stays anonymous. That's part of this transient hobo lifestyle, but it gives her some advantages. People underestimate her pretty frequently. Even those who know who she is tend to veer on the lower end for their estimates, which pays off. It's something that's a key part of the magic system. That getting anyone to underestimate you can decide how a fight goes, especially for mages. A large part of Frieren's whole journey is about that. Not being this person in the uniforms and the grand halls and all the people waiting on her every word. It's the antithesis of what Frieren's about. And it's why they have so little crossover. It's also one of those things that she imparts on these two. Being unassuming has its benefits. Being a hobo is kinda key to her whole fighting style. Mislead, make them think you're harmless. Ultimately, it's about experience over authority. So, Frieren and Serie both have a common connection in their past that helped them get on their current trajectory. For Frieren, that was to live as plainly as possible, basically go be a hobo for a while, and the other was to be an elite, to set up an organization that spread magic, but ended up setting itself up as the ultimate authority. This elf's predisposition to form little cliques has led to this whole organization where mages are ranked, and you have to do a ton of life or death tests for that honor, for like a shot at that honor. Whereas Frieren just takes an apprentice on as a favor to a drunk she used to hang out with. Again, she's a cartoon 1920s hobo. Frieren's approach leads to a lot more experiences than the first-class mage approach. You might not get the grand halls full of flowers, but you get this kind of stuff, The first-class mages, they get given missions. Their development as mages is guided by this central authority. They don't just show up and do stuff. They're first-class mages, here to do a mission. Frieren represents experience, going out and getting your hands dirty. Sometimes literally doing farming work to eat. Sometimes clearing out the magical equivalent of wild boars. It's an experience and a hands-on approach to life, as opposed to an elite education with an equipment and surrounding yourself with the best minds. We follow the hobos. The experience, the normality of life is a point of pride in Frieren. It's something to celebrate. A simple, traditional life is warm, whereas the sterile headquarters, they're presented as coldly as she is. The Continental Magic Association is treated in the narrative as this expansive, powerful organization. Each test takes place in a new area. Every shot is spanning how big it is. It's by far one of the things we see with the most resources. No one else has grand halls to host a little meeting in. Greenhouses, big sweeping spaces for a hobby you claim to hate anyway. Dungeons, golems, access to large islands to test in, the resources to ferry mages around at the last minute just to fulfill curiosity. It's a rich organization, right? This is the seat of power. It's the opposite of Frieren's approach. It's elitism. There are 600 5th class mages, more than 2,000 in the lower classes, and 45 in the first class, which kind of says something about elitism here. Barely anyone gets to be a first class mage. It's an elitist label for an elitist group, for someone with an elitist view of the magic system. In flashback, we learn Flamme started training Imperial mages and wanted Serie to take over. Serie doesn't care about magic becoming accessible. She does end up taking over a formal system of training mages, but she sets the whole thing up to filter people, to train those she deems special enough. No better summed up than by the last-minute change with the final test, becoming one based entirely on her judgment. The whole thing allows for her to follow up Flamme's wishes and maintain an elitist view of magic and those who practice it. Her whole tsundere thing makes her interesting. She definitely doesn't cave to that idea that magic should be universal. She operates in the opposite way to Frieren. Himmel comes from an ordinary background. A lot of the hero's party is completely unremarkable. Many of the first-class mages come from bigger roots, positions of influence, key roles in the military. A well-known family. An official authority attracts people who value authority. They have to prove themselves first. Then they get to meet the angry elf lady. I think making these two approaches to authority so different makes the whole idea of what magic should be a more interesting clash than having it just be a feud between two elves. It isn't entirely personal, just quite personal. They're coming at it from two opposite ends. Do you do better as a hobo or an elite? Do you experience actually doing, or the authority to not have to do yourself, to just wait for people to bring the experiences to you, people you've selected? Do you want an elitist vanguard pushing magic forward, or a folk magic tradition, doing fun little spells everywhere? Frieren's biggest development as a mage seems to have come in the more recent few decades, spent building connections and allowing new experiences beyond just focused on raw mage development. Serie's approach, the authority of being an elite, gives people the freedom to throw their weight around, but it doesn't get things done. The hands-on experience is better for development, and it's better for living a fuller life. The elitist one seems better for sulking and never admitting your real feelings to anyone. So what's the best type of mage? Clearly it's the hobo first-class adventure. It's the best of both worlds. See, in Fern, we have that. She's a hobo who gets the lived experience. She gets to learn from a hands-on perspective, gets to build the interpersonal stuff and relationships that help her grow, and she gets the authority too. She gets to throw around her qualifications and permission to go places. The doors are open for her. Even if she's choosing to live life like the vagabond grandma over here. She's like the Nepo baby pretending to come from a normal family, you know? Kind of getting the best of both. And ultimately, I think the elitist approach to training a mage is kind of deflated by the obvious cultural victory of the hobo lifestyle. Serie's judgment of Frieren being paired with Himmel's inspiration. It isn't a coincidence. Frieren's approach gets things done. An anonymous mage in the forest inspired Himmel. Himmel inspired a ton of people. I mean, half the world, it feels like. Like this guy. Their traveling around approach does nothing but inspire people. And in turn, it was inspired by someone witnessing a hobo in the woods doing magic. The elitist approach helps fine-tune the very best, but the hobo approach, that's a lot more magical. Hey, thanks for watching. I've been Comfy Learning. Sub if you want to see more similar videos. Alright, cheers.